is Evan, and currently I am living in a largely abandoned village in Greece, and I'm trying to live a sustainable, self-sufficient life, as well as contributing whatever I can to the village to perhaps encourage other people to take the move and leave the cities and become also more self-sufficient.
Why and how did you come to Alagonia?
I was on a journey, and for this journey I was planning on cycling to India. After a year of cycling, I ended up stumbling across this little village. I got invited for a coffee and I ended up staying. So I had an exchange with a local person here in exchange for watering his garden and feeding his chickens. I got to stay in a beautiful old, largely abandoned house in exchange, and it was perfect. Beautiful scenery, peace and quiet, people growing vegetables all around me, and flowing water to the village.
What is self-sufficient living?
Self-sufficient living is being able to provide for yourself. Okay, I mean more so being self-sufficient with regarding what you need to survive. Okay, a little bit of money is fine, but it's very important for me to be able to provide myself with my own food, and that's kind of the first step, is growing your own food and being able to preserve it, and then sharing and selling the surplus of what you can grow. It is very difficult, and it's very tough to be self-sufficient in all the food that you need. But regarding fruits and vegetables, we certainly are self-sufficient. But for things like grains and for flours and for making bread, it's a huge undertaking which involves a lot of energy, personal energy, in order to achieve that. But we're working with some people, and we're working on that. That's our next step.
And what is permaculture?
We're not exactly, we don't cultivate necessarily through permaculture. It's just one of many different types of organic farming or natural farming. I mean, permaculture is something that's like you're designing systems around your life and how you do how you live day to day. From a garden aspect, you're kind of you're making raised beds in the garden. You have lots of different crops growing amongst each other that can support each other in different ways below the soil. Other plants like shade, so therefore you're combining your companion planting with that. Your mulching, which is you're covering the soil from being exposed to the sun and also retaining moisture. And and water is always a key issue. What permaculture they say is you slow it, sink it, spread it. So if you've got water coming in, you have to try and retain as much water in the garden as possible. We have tried and been using permaculture since I started here, and but everything has its difficulties. If you've got problem with rodents and mice, they also really enjoy nice raised beds and very rich soil, so they can also be they play their part too, but in sometimes it can be a bit difficult working with the mice also. But so we have to adapt and change our methods, like everything, even in permaculture. I mean, you observe and you react afterwards.
You are trying to be as much zero waste as possible. What are the steps you have to take to get zero waste, and what is it actually?
In this village here, in fact, the local dumping ground, landfill, is for all of Kalamata and this region is actually in a mountain kind of next to us here. So we need to try and reduce our waste as much as we can. because that dump, landfill, is it's like on our doorstep. So to try and accomplish that, there's probably a couple of steps that you have to take in order to become zero waste. There's a couple of things that if you follow by certain guidelines, it's kind of easy to be achieved. One important thing is probably trying to buy things in bulk, which means that we provide our own buckets and we go down to a store. Fortunately, we have a store available in Kalamata they don't consider themselves anything zero waste, or they're not for like kind of more conscious, eco-conscious buyers, but it just happens that they sell a lot of stuff in bulk, like everything from seeds to flowers. So we can go to them. We actually buy full sacks of flour, but then you have to be using it a lot also. So yeah, if you can do that. When it comes to your packaging, okay, fortunate enough, we grow our own food, so that cuts out a huge amount of the packaging, which is like it's really is one of the first steps that you could do, as well as having your own healthy organic vegetables and fruits. Yeah, like that kind of on a household, you just have to be conscious of the packaging, and if we or I personally will feel responsible for whatever packaging I get, and I feel it's my responsibility to dispose of it correctly. So no matter what, if I have to choose between two products on a shelf, one's got plastic packaging and the other has got paper packaging, and if it's an organic plastic packaging or a non-organic paper packaging, it's kind of difficult, but plastic turns me off no matter what. So I nearly will go for paper packaging if I have to. And after that, I mean, you have to just be organized, and yeah, it's like we make our own bread and we do this, so we don't necessarily accumulate so much plastic garbage, and everything we can compost a lot of stuff because of the garden.
If people want to live a more sustainable life, how can they get started?
It's very important. I mean, you can feel incredibly independent if you're not relying on somebody else to produce your own food. So it can be difficult in a city, but perhaps there are also like small urban gardens, and you could perhaps get involved in there. I mean, you can still grow quite a lot of stuff in plants, in pots, on balconies. For example, I know a woman who grows her own cotton she's got 6 plants on her balcony, and that's enough cotton for her own personal use, or well, cosmetic wise or whatever it is. She grows just the cotton that she knows for a year. That's every year she'll plant that many, and that's it. If you get involved in like an urban garden or a community garden, wherever it is, I mean, you're also building relationships with other people, and therefore maybe you can also food is the most important thing, because not just that, I mean, it's not just like if you're buying food from a supermarket, you don't know where it's coming from. It's got a huge, perhaps environmental footprint also, between transportation, how it's grown, the workers, the welfare of the growers and the people who are working for those main farmers. It's tricky to be able to find like ethically produced vegetables, and also there is very little regulation, especially in this country, for vegetables. So you got to be very careful what you eat, because they could really be kind of sprayed quite heavy with different herbicides and pesticides.
What are your plans for the future for this project?
There are many avenues that myself and my partner could take. The garden, we know that we have plenty of stuff growing in the garden. We want to for sure establish more perennial systems, a lot more perennial systems, that necessarily we don't need as much vegetables as we actually grow, and therefore our energy can be kind of put into different projects. This is one aspect of it, self-sufficient. But then it's like, sure, you still have to have a side job at the same time. I mean, I cut grass, I chop wood, I help neighbours out. But still, for me personally, I need to be doing something bigger, and it gets tricky in Greece, especially for us not speaking the language so well and having to kind of rely on help from other people constantly for things. So we're still in that stage of we need to choose more like a path that might be bring in more of a sustainable source of income, but at the same time that will also benefit the village that we live in, because I mean it's very important that there's more of a local economy. It helps the village, it boosts tourism. If there are more businesses and things like that, it'll attract more people. Right now our time is split between doing village projects, helping out with the Cultural Association of the village, and yeah, but sometimes it's kind of, we need to know, it's hard yet to balance it all, but and it's also seasonal. So when working on your own garden, you've only got a certain time frame to do certain jobs, and once you miss that time frame, then you can't do it. Whether it's certain things for pruning, whether it's getting wood, it's cutting something, yeah, to do with wood, you have to be, plants need to get in the ground at a certain time. If you're too late, you're too late. It doesn't work. So that was also a learning curve. But through locals and you asking questions with the local people, that's how you learn how to really be able to manage on your own in a village.
I think recently, right, you have established that volunteers can come here and help you out. What do they do here and what can they learn?
We started the project actually like in December, last December, so it's maybe 9 months now. It was just something that, because we've been used to hosting volunteers and getting helpers for 5, 6 years, 7 years perhaps, and we felt maybe it could be a good thing for the village and for the local people to see that people willingly want to come and help and take part in whatever jobs need to be done around the village. People like to travel and they like to help, and if I know that if I was traveling and if I had the opportunity to help out in some way, I certainly would like to do it. And then also it's also another, it's kind of like an international angle on the village also. It's encouraging, again, people from many different places, and which can also interact with the locals and help out local people also. Also it benefits the local economy, and yeah, it's I think that people can come and they can leave their own mark on what they do. If we have artists coming or whatever it is, it's, I mean, people can, we leave it generally open for, because I mean we have our own ideas all the time. It's just that's what we kind of can do, but other people have other ideas that we would not have thought of, and it's can be very helpful, and it's also just, it just seems very creative as well at the same time.
There is the Cultural Association of Alagonia, and what projects do they organize and have established already?
Well, you could say first of all, we are a new team who got elected to the village to manage the Cultural Association. Generally, throughout the years, it was mainly just focused on just the church celebrations that happen every year, and people, perhaps local people, perhaps were happy enough with those. But because we're trying to encourage kind of a new, like, and push the more environmental movement in the village, it got to the point where it was very hard to even attend some of these celebrations due to the amount of waste that they produced at every event. So we actually established a you could say a swap shop, which works that people can take items, clothing, household items that they don't necessarily need anymore, and perhaps we can find somebody else that could use those, Well, with that, it actually started at one of these festivals, at the Potato Festival 3 years ago, where we tried to get a fundraiser going, and we started collecting lots of clothing and, again, household items, and we set up a bazaar, and it was a really good success, and we raised probably about €800. And with that €800, we were able to invest in reusable hard plastic cups and plates and knives and forks that could be used at other festivals and celebrations that happen throughout the village. And because it was a success, we were actually given a room in the community building to make it permanent. And that way we have a drop-off box down in the village square, and every week there are people bringing more stuff, and generally on Sundays it's open and people come and they can take whatever items they want or they need. For some local people, they don't necessarily have the financial means of being able to go and buy clothing or even just a pair of work pants or a work t-shirt. So it certainly helps them out a lot. Or likewise, if you've got small kids and that, with kids growing, it seems quite ridiculous to be having to be constantly buying new clothing. So it was a way of also cutting down on waste. Just throwing anything away and just really reusing items and repurposing items. So that swap shop has now been going for nearly 2 years now, and we do get a lot more donations though, and we're just, let's say, at the final stages of connecting with one or two different organisations, perhaps in Athens and that, who really are searching for particular clothing. So that way we will be able to send them some of our excess stuff also. So stuff is getting used. So between that and then all the village events, again the events that are, let's say, up to 200 people, we have all the stuff, that's all the cups and plates and forks and everything else. The local people have adapted to it, and it works. They don't necessarily resist this movement, because we all know that this garbage ends up on our doorstep anyway. It dramatically reduced the garbage from sack loads of stuff that just, again, the way I see it is that somebody comes to one of these church celebrations, they're offered a little shot glass of Cipro or a bit of wine, and it's like this little plastic cup has just been manufactured, transported, packaged, and now it's in the hands of one person for that 20 seconds, and then that's it. That's the end of that, and it's just more transportation to move it to the garbage, etc. I don't particularly agree with it. So if we can make a little change there, for us it's important at least.
Anything else that you would like to mention about self-sufficiency or natural farming?
Yeah, this is generally where I wake up every morning. It's maybe in a city that is more of that noise seems to be maybe a bit more from something that we might hear in a city, a garbage truck just collecting garbage. It's more, I don't think that you'll be able to really save the world by just one person or two people not producing so much garbage. But at least personally I don't feel the guilt of it, having to, I'm responsible for what I consume. I think it's a tough decision to make though. It's a tough life, but perhaps it's more rewarding at the end of the day. I wouldn't be able to handle if I had to work for 40 years, driving a bus, working in an office as an accountant. Maybe people can enjoy that. But for me personally, I have to be a lot more closer to nature. And I'm trying to kind of just help it at the same time for other people to also be able to appreciate it.